Now entering the squared circle pit, the biggest star to ever grace this podcast, the biggest star in New Japan Pro Wrestling right now, inarguably, the IWG United States Heavyweight Champion, Mr. Kenny Omega. Thank you, sir, for taking some time.
Good morning, or what time zone are you in? Where are we again?
I am in New York City.
Good morning for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
good evening.
Yeah. And, you know, my math isn't the best, but I just realized it's the morning of the G1 for you, the first day of the G1. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It's an early afternoon show today, so I've got a little bit of time to relax or get a quick workout in, and then we head to the show. It is not my block, but, I'm paying close attention to everything, and I've got to get into that G1 mode, so this day is just as important.
So this is one of those shirt-on kind of days for you in the ring.
Yeah, it's fair to say that it will be a shirt-on kind of day, yeah.
I noticed that happens in the tag team matches where you don't feel like taking off your shirt. You don't want to influence the ladies in the crowd too much for the tag team matches.
No, yeah, that and it's a bit of a hassle to have to shave your chest every day. So
that's something.
Got to give the irritated skin a day off or two every now and then.
That makes perfect sense to me. So, like mentally, this is going to be like a few weeks of almost every day, right, or virtually every day.
Yes,
matches.
Almost every day.
How do you prepare? Like, do you step up your cardio? Like what preparation goes into the G1?
Well, the cardio is almost built into the tournament, right? Because you're working almost every day. Of course, leading up to the G1, you can do things like up your cardio. You can cut back on your rest time in between sets and all that. But in general, for me, who has kind of gone into this thing already kind of being in decent athletic condition, I've done some long matches of this year already that I've prepared for. It's more of the mental grind that gets you. It's staying mentally focused, being able to switch the brain on and off on a moment's notice, and just being able to be inspired to tell these stories on a whim. It's really difficult, and that's kind of the part of it that people overlook is that a lot of it's very cerebral, especially if you're not a wrestler like how I am, and more so a performer and a storyteller. It's a little more difficult on the brain than the body.
I imagine because you basically have to come up with, I don't know, like over 10 to 15 different stories or whatever.
Right, exactly.
In the process of the tournament.
Yeah. So we've got like 20 shows or whatever it is, and the tag matches people aren't necessarily focused or invested in, but you can't just throw them away. Those are important too. And the fans are happy to see everyone. And
ultimately, I feel for you are proud of your work, and I feel it seems watching your matches that you're not the type of guy that typically phones it in. You give it your all. If it's a singles match, if it's the main event at Wrestle Kingdom, or even I honestly love the tag matches where the Bullet Club is together because you guys have such great camaraderie and chemistry working together.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what a lot of people sort of write off the tag matches just in general because, the cards aren't based around those. But, me knowing that full well that perhaps not everyone is signing on to New Japan Pro Wrestling World, our streaming service, for those tag matches, they still might be tuning in to watch the show and they want to watch all of it. And it would be a disservice, I think, to everyone if you just threw the match away and kind of just said, well, I know you just want to watch the main event, so we're going to phone it in. I still try to make good memories for those matches and try to make them fun. Not necessarily, the hard-hitting, emotional blockbusters of main event style matches, but if it's entertaining and you can smile or you can laugh or there was something cool to take away from it, I think that's just as important in the undercard.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who's gotten into New Japan over the last few years, I initially definitely felt like how you say, like I skipped over the tag matches, like they seemed inconsequential. But the more I would get into it, and every time there would be a wrestler in the matches that I would care about, I found myself more and more drawn into them. And I really like the tag matches as a storytelling device to kind of advance feuds. And if like there's tag teams where the feud switches, where the two singles in the tag team switch feuds with like I like that as a creative way to move the story along without giving away all the matches.
Definitely. And I even, and this is for me, not necessarily for everyone, but I actually like the dynamic of being able to see in these multi-mans. Sometimes you're going to get, because we don't really mix weight classes, the tag matches allow for, a junior wrestler, which will never, I can't say never, but will just uncommonly get a singles match with a heavyweight wrestler. These are the chances to see those guys put in some work together. And for me, that was always really cool and exciting and fun to watch. Or even just, in New Japan, we have a lot of very long, slow burn angles where you're kind of married to an individual for a long period of time. So those tag matches allow for it to be freshened up a little bit, where you can see, the person that you're watching in a different match than the person he's in an angle with, at least for a small period of time.
Right, and have them interact with other wrestlers. Yeah,
exactly.
It makes perfect sense. Well, I like I said, I've been a big fan of yours for a while, and I listened to your podcast with Chris Jericho, and I was a little surprised. I don't know if surprised is the word, but it took me aback to hear that you happen to be a metalhead. And
a little bit, yeah.
Because you told a story about on the podcast about how you got Chris Jericho's Blind Guardian CD. Could you just quickly recap that? Like what? How that came about?
Well, it was just as a fluke of fate. My English teacher in high school was a close friend of Chris Jericho's, I guess, longtime friend, and at the time, Chris Jericho was doing an article for some sort of metal magazine, I believe it was, and he would review just some albums. I don't know if they were necessarily always new, but he would review just a handful of albums and give his opinions. And of course, to review some stuff, he would have to hear it, and he'd have to physically have the CD. This is kind of before the days of like digital media. So I guess I doubt it was that he disliked it, but you receive this abundance of metal, and I don't know how, but I do know how. Yes, I was wearing a Blind Guardian shirt to one of the classes that I was, and my teacher had noticed, and I suppose he had just made a mental note that he had seen that, and when Chris came out with a review of one of the Blind Guardian albums, he'd kind of, connected the dots and saying like, oh, wow, this kid who's this wrestling fan, and he's also a Blind Guardian fan. And, if Chris passes this album along to me, because he would give him some albums too. I guess the teacher was also into metal. He then, presented me with the album from there as like an Indian gift, so to speak.
I love it.
I loved it.
Which album was it? Which Blind Guardian?
It was Imaginations from the Other Side.
Oh, a pretty good gift.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, I had just started to get into Blind Guardian. We had this show in Canada because we had Much Music as like our musical station. I guess you guys always had MTV.
Oh, you had Much
in
Music,
America. Right. So we had Much Music, and we had this program called Loud, which was kind of devoted to, I guess it was 1 hour of just all metal music videos. Mm-hmm. And that's how I came on to Blind Guardian, was they played Mirror Mirror on the show. And I was like, man, this is so good. I don't even know what genre this is, but I really like it. It's super melodic, and the technicality of the instruments and stuff are just through the roof. So, I became a fan just through that one song. So it's kind of just an overnight fan at that point. So to get another album and then hear, another album's worth of stuff, just that blew me away as well. Great gift.
That's cool. So my question was going to be if what came first, your passion for wrestling or your passion for metal? But I'm guessing by then you were already big into wrestling.
Oh, of course. I mean, yeah, I think that probably that came before almost anything because I feel that maybe I was a wrestling fan at the age of either 4 or 5.
Hmm.
So almost like to the point of being cognizant of my own memories, like I was already into wrestling and full contact sports and stuff like that.
Do you remember your earliest wrestling memory? Like your earliest memory of watching wrestling? Do you have any
I
indication?
mean, it's kind of a blur, but I remember uh, kind of sitting up with my dad and my grandpa, and we were watching Saturday night's main event, and the timing seems about right because they were that was like WWF at the time, their sort of prominent television show in the 80s and early 90s.
Hmm.
And then when I was growing older and going to school and going to a babysitter and stuff, I remember that my dad used to tape them, late at night because they would air, I guess, past my bedtime. And, I would watch them the next morning right before going. So he would tape them whenever the episodes would air. I wouldn't even know what it would be, I guess 9 or 10 p.m. And then I would watch them the next day at 5 a.m. And it was always, I was always supposed to get woken up at like 6:30 or so, but I would wake up on my own, just being so excited because I knew there'd be a new episode of wrestling to watch.
I'm with you. I was the same way on the weekends. I would wake up super early. I wouldn't know when it was on and just turn it on and wait for it.
Yeah, even when it was, they made the switch over to Monday Night Raw, and I had a bedtime. I would, try to sneak out and make the kind of blanket fort over the TV so that no one knew anyone was awake.
Yeah, yeah. And but to switch onto metal a little bit,
Sure.
what are some of your favorites other than Blind Guardian? Are there any other bands you dig?
At that time, I mean, that was sort of a gateway drug to getting into power metal. So from
Hmm.
there, like I sort of discovered Stratovarius. Um, Rhapsody was another one I was into, and then I had kind of gotten away from power metal for a little bit, and then when I started coming back out to Japan, I stumbled upon a band called Galnerius, and they're really cool. Um,
Oh, I haven't
and
heard of
then
them. What do they sound
you
like?
have
What's
they sound a lot like Stradivarius actually.
okay?
Yeah, they sing mainly in English, but they are a Japanese band, and yeah, they have this weird show. I'm saying it's weird. It's not weird at all, but they'll interview just a band or an artist, and they'll play a song in house, kind of live on the episode. And Galnerius was one of those bands, and they usually do like idols, pop stars,
Right.
even rappers. But I'm watching this band, and you can tell they're probably in the genre of rock or something, visual kei perhaps. And then they played this song called Destiny, which it's a great introduction if you don't know what the band's all about. So Galnerius and the song's called Destiny is very, very good. Just super, just a great sing along tune.
Hmm.
But yeah, got into that. As for other stuff, I mean, I started with Metallica, much like a lot of people did.
Yeah.
I was playing ice hockey at a young age, and we would play stuff to hype us up before matches. So I started with the Master of Puppets album by Metallica, and I wasn't ever into metal for the longest time. Like we would have our school sock ops and dances, and they would play Enter Sandman, and I would hate it. I would hate when they would play it. I'd be like, get this off. Or even they would play Marilyn Manson too, and I didn't like it. Like I could understand that it was catchy,
Hmm.
like I get it, but then they would play it so much, and I would just
You were just sick of it.
but
Like that's that. Like in that
yeah,
sense.
because I think I was always sort of like the guy that didn't want to like anything popular when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So the fact that it was popular just almost upset me, and then I would hear it all the time, and you'd have dudes that would one day be completely into Nirvana, and then the next day they'd be into Marilyn Manson. Just whatever the flavor of the month was.
Just posers, as we like to say
Yeah,
in
of
this
course.
day.
Yeah. Believe it or not, they existed in high school. So, yeah, when I finally heard the Master of Puppets album, I heard I guess the way the track listing goes, it goes Battery and then Master of Puppets. Just back to back, these awesome tracks just blew me away. So I asked to borrow the cassette tape at the time. And yeah, just everything on that album was so good. And it just made me go from like, it made me just a complete fan. And actually Metallica, I love their stuff to this day. It's timeless. Like any of their songs from the past are great. And even some of their new stuff is really good too.
Yeah, I really like their most recent album. It was really good. Hardwired.
Yeah, I mean, the one song, I think it is it Spit Out the Bone or whatever it's called?
That's the last track on the
that's a great song. I love it. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like those old Metallica, like it has the pacing of those old Metallica records where the last song is like the heaviest, like Dyer's Eve, Damage Incorporated. Like it fits kind of in that level. Yeah. And I feel like what you said about Enter Sandman, as a Metallica fan, I agree with you completely. I'm so sick of that song that it's just been played to death. And it's always like the one Metallica song that everybody knows. And I mean, look, nothing taking away from it. Obviously, it has to be a great song to be that overplayed. But it's like there's other really good Metallica songs to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, like, but it's over about 100. So
yeah.
I mean, really, I think the greatest time I ever had listening to that song was maybe just because the old ECW wrestler Sandman came out to it.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah,
that was the only time it's tolerable. You're right. The only acceptable time is when Sandman's
it was. But yeah, so Metallica sort of started the metallic journey, so to speak, and then I got gradually kind of more heavier. I never went too crazy, but you know, I was really into like Fear Factory, like super into Fear Factory. It was probably the band I enjoyed the most throughout high school. Just a huge fan. You know, Sepultura was another one. You know, then I would get into more stuff, kind of like, you know, Static X and things like that. Rammstein was good. I still love Rammstein too.
They're amazing. I just saw them live a week or two ago. And
oh, really?
I feel you would appreciate this. I compared it to a wrestling show because they have a lot of pyro, and the pyro in the sense it's kind of like high spots. So they really paced it out so well, where they start with like the small pyro, like it just, you know, like fireworks, and then like little pyro shots, and then as the show progressed, the pyro high spots got more and more crazy to the point that the last song, everything is blowing up, you know, and you're just so hyped. They really told a story with their pyro, and I really appreciated it from that point of view.
Yeah, they psychologically paced it, which is always appreciated. Because, I mean, you can even see because I used to, once I started getting into music and stuff, you know, it's not that I lived in Winnipeg, and we're not like a huge hub for music, but we did get a lot of shows. And we also got a lot of, you know, smaller scaled shows. So I would go very often to this small little sort of hub where, you know, not well-known bands would be there, but they wouldn't need a stadium to play. So, you know, that's going to places like these little theaters. You know, I was able to catch bands like Hatebreed live and stuff like that. And Diecast was another band I really loved in high school.
Oh, that's awesome. I feel like nobody knows Diecast anymore. They kind of
No, they're so good. Yeah. I mean, it is a shame because when I first heard their debut, not their debut album, but the album I guess that put them on the map, I really thought what they were doing was almost revolutionary for kind of metal, just with they had a very, like, what they did was very catchy, but it wasn't like catchy in a sellout-ish sort of way. It wasn't like overly produced catchy. It was just because the way that they just the way that they produced the tracks themselves, and you know, with the breakdowns and stuff, like all of them were so catchy. And
Yeah, they were
Yeah,
kind of ahead of
every
that metalcore curve too, with like all of
right,
those bands.
exactly. Before sort of metalcore became its own thing, and then everyone was doing very similarly sounding breakdowns. Diecast was like you said ahead of the curve, and I love their stuff. Even when they changed their lead singer and they came out with that other album after,
Yeah,
that album was still pretty good.
yeah, I really like that. I can't. The names of the albums escape me, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And that album
Right,
was
yeah,
good. And that singer was actually, I felt, he had much greater range, so he could really
he did.
pick up the clean. I feel like when the metalcore trend started, all of these guys who weren't really singers tried to sing and they couldn't. But like he pulled it off. That guy.
Yes, yeah, he did really, really well with it. Yeah, no, definitely. Um,
Tearing down your blue skies, is that the one? Or Day of Reckoning is the one you were talking about before?
yeah, Day of Reckoning was that first one that I had listened to, and then yeah, Tearing Down Your Blue Skies probably sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, you're in Japan, and I
Yes.
feel the biggest metal band in Japan the last few years is Baby Metal, and
Yeah, it is. Yeah, probably. Believe it or not.
yeah.
Yeah.
They and what's interesting is they combine the J-pop and metal. Some metalheads, some true metalheads here in the states reject it, are very against it. But for me, I think it's amazing. It's so great because first of all, it's fun, and
Yep.
it can get kids into metal, which is very important. You got to keep it going.
I totally agree.
So I was going to ask what your opinion on them is, but
Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar opinion. I am. My tastes are very wide open. I'm not closed minded to hearing anything. So as much as I love metal, I love pop. I love hip hop. I love rap. I love almost anything as long as it sounds good to me, to my ears. So a mixing of genres, I'm totally cool with it if they're able to make it right, and if it doesn't sound like they're sacrificing one over the other, as long as it's like a great marriage of ideas. And I think Baby Metal works fantastically. Um, yeah.
have you gotten the chance to see them live?
No, I had tickets in my hand at one point, but work duty had called, so I wasn't able to go. But because I wasn't able to go and I was sort of voiced my disappointment for it, I sort of have like carte blanche and an open door agreement to come see them any chance there's an opportunity, which I'm really looking forward to because I'll hop on it as soon as I can. Yeah.
I mean, you're a busy
But
guy. Yeah.
yeah, no, and especially when I'm here, right? So
Right.
when I come here, it's kind of I'm here for the purposes of work, and they don't really give me much free time. Even if I should have free time, they'll fill my schedule with something, some sort of media stuff and all that. So it's
So
even if I might have like an
you don't live there like when you're not touring with New Japan, you come back to Canada or wherever.
I mean I kind of do live here. I still
Oh,
spend
okay.
most of my year here by far, but it's almost like if I need to escape work, I have to get out.
I see.
Because yeah, like I mean, if we for example, if we have a tour, and let's say in between tours there's like a 10-day grace period where there's nothing going on, they'll still try to fill my schedule 8 of those 10 days with something. So there's going to be a time after a hard tour, for example, the
Yeah.
G1, where the next tour kind of follows soon afterwards, but I'm just gonna go home and hide from it all, so they can't bother me.
And you guys travel like by buses together, right? Like, or how does that? Or do you
Yeah,
travel alone?
yeah. When we like for the arenas and such, they are typically 4 hours, 4.5 hours apart from each other. Ballpark. That's kind of the way that they like to space the venues out. So when that is the case, we do take the tour buses. Yeah, there are 3 of them, and we kind of split up the buses accordingly via unit. So the Bullet Club's going to travel together, and they're going to travel apart from Chaos and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but now today we're in Hokkaido, which for those that don't know their Japanese geography, going from Tokyo to Hokkaido in one shot is about a 30-hour jaunt. So we actually flew this time around, which is nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
too shabby. And I have to, if Bullet Club, if you guys were a band, what would the sound of Bullet Club be? What subgenre of metal, or any other subgenre would Bullet Club be? But I feel like they would be a metal
You know,
band.
I know, I totally agree. And I actually thought about this, and I feel like because of the message we try to spread and just kind of, the adversity that we've had to go through, it would probably be something like Hatebreed, where, we're trying to spread the message of fighting through adversity and not giving up. And, and because this is not saying anything negative towards Hatebreed, but because we don't have, that much time on our hands, our songs are gonna be a little shorter than most.
Yeah,
Hatebreed songs usually, they hit you hard and fast, and then they're done. They out. Yeah.
That's not an insult at all. That's an
No,
accurate
not
description.
at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Like, I'm so curious about Japanese culture. Like, ever since kind of getting into New Japan, like I've always been enamored by Japan, but more so as a New Japan fan. And I want to learn Japanese. Because I want to understand the promos. Like, everyone's delivering these passionate promos, and the announcing in Japanese sounds so exciting that I just want to hear. Do you have any tips for people who speak English, or anyone else who would want to learn Japanese, where to start?
Yes. I mean, my tips are only really reflective of my own experiences, because I learned in a very strange, sort of unique way.
How did you pick up on it?
I mean, I probably did what everyone did at the beginning, which is, you buy a textbook or like an audio book or whatever, and you just kind of study it normally how you would study, your homework from school. And I found that it never stuck. And it's not because I didn't want to learn it. Nothing to do with that. It's just because I think it resembled work too much to go about it that way. And nothing was interesting in the way that it was presented to me. Wasn't it's like when you kind of make just like a textbook, and the sentence you're studying is like, there is a dog, there is a cat, I eat food. Even if you memorize lines like that, which I did in the beginning before going to my first tour in 2008, you realize quite quickly that not much of that is actually of use in the real world.
Right.
Maybe in a car, you're going to pass by a dog, and then you can say, oh, there's dog in Japanese. And I'm sure someone may be impressed by it. It's not going to help your living skill, your survival skill in the country. You can't develop relationships with that level of language. So what I did was I immersed myself more so in like Japanese media, and I would watch. I would make an effort to try to find some kind of show that I could watch in Japanese, with subtitles. That was of kind of an easy level, where they're using more conversational Japanese. Like, I'm not going to find like a political drama or something like that.
Or like the news. I feel they always speak so quickly on the news. Yeah.
Right. You never want to learn that way, because to this day, I wouldn't be able to understand a lot of what they're talking about, because they're using very
like sophisticated grammar, sort of, as opposed to
exactly, and it's very
language.
Crisp and clean and overly polite, where no one would ever use that in a typical conversation. So I would just scour the databases for animes that I liked. However, as good as anime is for learning, it's different because of the way mouths and such are animated. You can't really get a feeling for how you're actually supposed to speak the words, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Right. So the best way to do it, for me anyway, the best way to do it was I found live action dramas, and they really helped. And if there was something that I wanted to learn from that, or if there's like a translated, because I'm still watching with subtitles.
So you're watching
If I see
a native Japanese show with English subtitles.
right with English subtitles,
Right,
and
right.
if I see something within the subtitles that looks like could be useful, I will watch that scene over and I'll try to pick apart, what section of that scene, this translated part of the dialogue is actually in, and then I would learn that way. It takes a little bit of work,
Yeah. How long would
but
you say did it take you until you felt comfortable, like speaking it in public, even? Like where you were like, okay, I can get by.
I started in 2008, like I'd said, and I started the wrong way for me anyway. And I had met a friend who had gone to university in Alabama, so he was kind of more or less bilingual, and he had helped me he helped me translate. He kind of made sure I just didn't turn up dead someplace in Japan. So he was
Right.
he was a lifesaver, but I was leaning on him so much to the point where I felt like I really needed to find a new way. And that's kind of when I stumbled upon this. I mean, I'm sure it's a legitimate method, but I kind of just thought of it myself, was just to take a more studied approach when I actually watched dramas and stuff, to try to retain more of what was going on and focus not only on the words on the screen, but the dialogue that was going with it. I don't know if you watch a lot of subtitled shows or not, but I found that when I was doing it, and I still do it to this day, if I don't care and my brain is shut off, you actually kind of shut off your brain to the words that are being spoken. You kind of you hear them, they're being spoken, but you're not really. If someone asked you to repeat what had been said, a second after it had been said, you probably wouldn't even know where to start, because you just focus too much on the English translation on the bottom.
Right. See, for me, I kind of find like after an hour or so of reading the
Yeah.
subtitles, it's almost the opposite, where you can kind of sense what they're saying based on how they emote. Like I still
Yes,
look at
and
the
that
subtitles, but it kind of gives you a tip.
right, and that's the important part. That's what you want to start picking up, is the nuance and stuff, and how the words are spoken, and how a conversation actually sounds and flows. It's very important. And even by deciphering kind of how a conversation should flow, that almost helps you figure out the way to place your words,
Right.
what words are correct, what words aren't correct in that scenario.
Just the certain
And then
cadences that they use.
right, and
Yeah.
then from there, of course, is building your own vocabulary. And for me, that was you just have to just grind that out.
Yeah.
That's like, what word do you want to say? Look it up, write it down. Use it in a real sentence.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Eventually,
practice makes perfect. Yeah.
Right.
And
Like,
yeah,
there's no other way aside from that, for me anyway.
And you've been doing it for like 9 years now, so you've built up enough of a vocabulary to have a good arsenal of terms
Yeah,
and phrases to use.
definitely. Yeah. And there's stuff that you learn and you'll feel like you made a breakthrough, but because it's so high level and uncommonly used that you may not retain it, and that's going to happen. But I mean, it's as long as it doesn't discourage you.
Do you know any
It's
other languages other than Japanese?
No.
It's just
I mean, I was actually really good in French
right,
in my high school days.
right.
It was
Because
an optional class. We didn't have to take it, but I was always about the top of my class in French. So I guess
sounds a lot like wrestling.
maybe I
Am I
just have
right?
a knack for it. Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe. Maybe.
Right now, I feel.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah,
that's fair
definitely.
to say.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's if you talk to some WWE fans, they may disagree, but
But that's because they don't know. I mean,
yeah,
like,
they just they don't want to know,
right.
but that's
Well,
okay.
well,
Yeah.
look, I have to say, as somebody who at one point like was that type of fan, there is a barrier to it. I feel like having the Japanese language commentary, it's like kind of
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
this like foreign. It's kind of like the kids who liked the kids who liked Enter Sandman, they're the
Right.
ones who are like, oh, screw Master, like they're anti-elitists.
Right, of course. No, definitely. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
like, I'm not even going to listen to Master of Puppets. How could
yeah,
it be better?
yeah.
This song is a single. This song's making all the money. I'm not even going to try. You're wrong. No, totally. That's exactly what it's like.
But if you take your time, like what I find is that for the time I invest,
Hmm.
like if there's a formula of time invested to entertainment value, New Japan has the highest ratio of that. Like it's such a rewarding experience to watch it because it is a sport. It is treated like it's obviously entertainment, but
Yeah.
it's presenting a sport as entertainment as opposed to like there are rules to the story and it's followed and things get followed up and I feel that's something that we need more of. There needs to
Yeah.
be, yeah.
I think it's there's a benefit to us being forced to tell our stories or whatever story it is that we want to tell. There's a benefit to us having to tell it through our actions in the ring. I do actually kind of wish we were a bit more of a hybrid where we could do some of the crazy sort of backstage stuff that a company like WWE would do. But
I feel like you're kind of slowly pushing that in though. Like with
right,
yeah.
I'm doing that. Yeah, with us doing our online show being the Elite, we're able to kind of get the best of both worlds, where we can make stories from nothing, continue stories that may have happened on a show or in the ring, and yeah, it allows us a little more freedom to do the more dramatic soap opera type of stuff.
And it seems like New Japan gives you like carte blanche, like go ahead, do like. I'm curious, like
Right.
how much do you have to kind of? I don't know if like the term, like the phrase is like get approved by them or like run it past that, like, or do they just kind of like this is where we're going with the match? You figure out how to get there. This is who wins, or is it more of a collaborative process, or like the
Well,
feud, I should say?
everything that we do is on our own. We never actually ask for permission.
This is with being the elite, you mean?
Yeah, with being the elite,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. We do know our boundaries, and there are things that we can't do, and we've sort of been warned we cannot do. For example, we can't film portions of the episode in the ring during a match, which we would love to do, but we can't. And that's not even a New Japan decision. That's actually part of the contract that we've made with TV Asahi, who films all of our stuff and help us with our streaming service.
I see.
So so we're contractually obligated to have only their cameras present for any show. So whereas it would be okay, it can't be because it's actually a violation of the contract. So we would love to actually continue stories in the ring or in the arena or whatever, but everything that takes place on the episodes is kind of outside of that ringside domain.
Right.
But generally, I mean, they trust us. They see how many views we're getting. They see that it's something that's catching up. We're not disrespecting any of their angles or storylines or wrestlers.
Yeah, and it's
And
getting
they,
over.
yeah, exactly. And they see the success and they like it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure at one point, maybe when we were trying to get it off the ground, they wanted more sort of say into what we filmed and what we didn't. But now they kind of really trust us with the whole project. And, it goes for my wrestling too, even. The Kenny Omega Cleaner character, it was they really wanted to have a hand in everything that I did in the beginning. And now they just kind of trust me to do whatever it is that I want. And, the freedom's nice. It's nice to have that trust. And I guess the only thing they ask in return is that we produce the results.
And it seems like you've been delivering in that department as well. Although you haven't had a 5-star match this year. Has
Yeah,
that?
I know. I've been desperately searching for it, and I thought that I had it for sure on the US G1 tournament. But again, it's always going to be a matter of opinion. And
Yeah.
Dave's been really kind to me.
But But you've been getting a lot of
The
praise.
way,
Sorry.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Like in my mind,
Yeah.
I had thought for sure I had thought the match of night 1 with Elgin would be a 4.5, and then I thought the main event on night 2 was going to be my 5 for the weekend. In the end, both got 4.75, so I'm averaging out the same. So I can't really complain.
So,
But
like,
yeah, I'm still desperately searching for that first 5 of the year, though.
like we're joking around, but like, do you give thought to that? Like after a match, or you're like, yeah, that's a 5, or like, or is it, like, yeah, that was a 5?
No, generally speaking, like my first like knee-jerk reaction to everything is I try to recall the fans in-house. How are they reacting to the match? And I try to reflect on that right away as soon as the match is done. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just obvious where you feel it. You feel it in the ring. It's magical. It sticks with you, and you don't even have to give it a second thought. You're like, okay, the fans love that. Great. After that, how did your opponent like it? How did the office like it? Then after that, okay, how did the community like it? Because it's sometimes there's a disconnect, right? There's matches that are great live, and sometimes it doesn't translate as well, or may translate better on TV. So I like to see the differences between how the reaction was live and then how the reaction was on our streaming service or on TV or however they watched it. And then after all of that, I just sit and wait patiently and like, okay, what did the critics say? But it comes way down the line.
Right. And yeah, I could, as someone who watched it on TV, I thought all of your matches came off amazing. The Ishii match, especially, I am not a vocal person when watching wrestling on television, but there were certain parts like the suplex, the dragon suplex spot off the apron where I like my heart, like that was high drama of the highest order, and both of you played your roles perfectly. And like Ishii is like a total gem of a talent in the New Japan roster, and that it seems like he could have a hard hitting, brutal old style Japan match, and then he can like trade off with you and like work with your style. Like the dude is unstoppable.
Yeah, I was really glad that things worked out the way that they did, because I think that in this sort of new style, because I mean there really is no more classical strong style, because classical strong style, if you really go back and watch it, you'd be hard pressed to find people that would mesh well with that style unless they committed 100% to wrestling in that same way. Mm-hmm. Now we're a more worldwide sort of international product, and we have lucha athletes. We have guys from England kind of doing catch style. We have just kind of typical North American entertainment style. Guys like me that are trying to make their own, mixing everything and making like a hybrid style. So Ishii, I think, is a prime example, who has sort of that kind of throwback strong style, but he's really actually new age strong style. And I think having him in that main event slot in the tournament was a great way to show, this is sort of New Japan circa 2017. This is what we've become. And I almost think he was maybe the perfect man for the job.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah. And I'm just really glad that the fans took to it too. I mean, I figured that they would, but I mean, when you look at night 1 and the guys getting the huge reactions, right? It was myself, the Bucks, Tanahashi, Okada, Naito, I guess. Ishii was kind of silently winning himself over with the crowd, and by the end of night 2 in that main event, everyone's like, "My God, I didn't really know who this guy was, but boy, is he good." And he deserved it. He busted his butt.
I think part of it had to do with that awesome match he had with Zack Sabre at the beginning of the rope
really
break.
It really set the table for him. And then the main event being just a just this war of attrition, really physical, hard-hitting match to really show that, this is probably the only place you can see this type of matchup, which, it was a cool little message to send to everyone.
And like, so like you wrestled twice. Like, what did you do in the interim when you had that time in between? Were you just drowning in water, like hydrating yourself as much as possible? Like, how do you stretch?
Yeah. I kind of took the same approach as I did for the 60-minute match, where you really go into it knowing that it's going to take a toll on your body. My style is really dynamic and explosive, and it's tough for me to get into that gear, to get the engine churning to the point where you can go from 0 to 200 on a moment's notice many times throughout the match, over and over and over again, and then to have to shut down from that, cool off, and then keep in mind you have to do it all over again in like an hour or whatever it was. It's really tough, like physically and mentally, to get back into that mind space, and even physically to bring yourself back to that point where, okay, I have to be firing on a hair trigger again. It's so tough. So yeah, hydration was a part of it, but just I can't even it was really difficult for me though. I was like, man, before going out to do the Ishii match, I was like, Jesus, like this might be more difficult for me than the hour-long match, because at least I could keep the engine revving.
Right, your adrenaline kept building with that.
Right. And instead of having to shut down and having to start back up cold again, it was tough. And I think it was the crowd that really got me through that one.
That's awesome. Two more questions. I'll let you go. I know we went way over. So with the G1 right now, the story that I see that's building, and that's been building in New Japan, or I don't know if it's building in New Japan, but that you have been talking about, is you are planning on getting to the finals of the G1, and you want your rival Kota Ibushi to be in the finals of the G1. And I saw a quote from Kota where he said he didn't want to face you because he thought it would end both of your careers. And he goes, now I think if we did face each other, someone might die, and that you frighten Kota. How do you feel about that?
I mean, there is no stories. This is just reality. I don't believe New Japan at any one point in time had any plans for us to be anywhere near each other. And even though it's a big money match, it's what everyone wants to see, and it really is kind of like real life drama. Everything that I've said in interviews, it's kind of true. And even those comments from Ibushi, they are true. There were many times in DDT when we were together, that company wanted to go back to that match so many times. It was the easy sellout match. They could fill arenas with that easily, anytime. And we'd said, we can't, because if we do this, we're going to push ourselves to the point of no return. Someone is for sure going to get hurt or worse. We can't do it. So we agreed to it the one more time, which was at Budokan in 2012. And then we said, like, we'll do it this one time. We can't ever do it again.
That was an insane match. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was probably the most physically demanding match that I've ever done. And we had made a promise to each other after that we would never do it again unless the situation was right. And we didn't say what exactly that situation would be. But in our minds, we kind of thought that right situation would probably have to be the Tokyo Dome. But we didn't say it. It was kind of unspoken, but we sort of knew what we were thinking. And
would the finals also be a situation?
I think so, because now having been there, the finals, although, in size and spectacle, the G1 finals isn't as large of a venue as the Tokyo Dome, it certainly feels like the most special occasion of the year.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really kind of maybe the moment that the fans mostly look forward to is the crowning of the G1 champion of the year. This is the time of year when we have the most sponsors, where our tickets sell the fastest, where the demand is most through the roof. People wait all year for this tournament. And I mean, everyone wants to see that final match. So it may be the place. It may be the time.
Well, that's the one I would love to see that as the finals. But, I have no doubt that Kenny Omega's making it. If Ibushi doesn't make it to the finals, would you, based on what you just said, would you lay out the challenge for him to compete for your U.S. title at the Tokyo Dome? Would that be something that you could see yourself doing? Or is it a little too early to say?
That's a tough call because Ibushi is a very strange individual, and I don't know if he has plans to stick around. He's really fly by night. And yeah, if he sticks around and he's here for the long term, I can imagine our paths crossing, and I would refuse to wrestle him in any place but the Tokyo Dome if the G1 passes us by.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to pass him by you. I have no doubt you're making it to the final.
well, thank you.
All right. Well, last question. If you could feud with anybody in the history of pro wrestling, living or dead, what would your dream 6-month feud be, or a year feud?
Whoa, that's a very good question. Wow. I'm just gonna say who came to mind originally. Because if I overthink it, it's not going to be an organic answer.
Yeah.
But when you asked the question, I thought about what could be fun and what could be, I guess, revolutionary for the sport. I would probably have to say, when he was healthy, of course, Mick Foley. I think we could do some crazy stuff together.
Which iteration of his would you?
Mankind for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Mankind when he was doing the Hell in the Cell, Boiler Room Brawl type stuff. I would have loved to have been if the timing was different and I had sort of came onto the scene way earlier, I would have loved to have been in the mix doing stuff with him at that point in time. Would have been real cool. The easy answer, of course, would have been something like Shawn Michaels or even Kurt Angle, like a real athlete. Rob Van Dam would be another cool guy to do something, some cool stuff with. As a performer, entertainer, I've said in the past I would love to do an angle with Vince McMahon. Would be so fun.
Well, you might have a chance down the line. We don't know.
I don't know how well. Yeah, I don't know how much he wants to be in front of the camera anymore, though.
That's
true.
I
think his days of working in the ring are numbered. But yeah, there's different routes, and but I guess for right now, that with the style that I'm kind of going forward with and the stories that I'm telling, Mankind probably seems to jive the best with it. But yeah, there's so many dudes. But if we're going right now, I mean, the guy I would love to wrestle. I mean, there's a few. I mean, we talked about him on this episode. I would love to wrestle Chris Jericho.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean,
a Winnipeg feud.
the King of Winnipeg match. I would love to wrestle AJ Styles. We still have that history. Yes. We have the unfinished business together. I'd love to wrestle John Cena. There's a lot of dudes that I think I would really mesh well with.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anybody you wouldn't really mesh well with. I feel like
right,
you and Billy Gunn would have a classic.
I actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I was really hoping that I would get a singles with Billy at some point. And then, they announced Billy versus Todd, and I was like, God damn, it's probably my last chance. It's gone.
Well,
But I thought it would have been real fun though. Braun Strowman would be another guy that I think would be a real fun match.
Do you keep up? Do you like try to keep up with other? I mean, like you're a busy guy, but do you just read it online?
Yeah.
Do you watch stuff? Like, how do you?
Of course I read stuff. Reading stuff is easy because everything's popping up on my timeline.
Mm-hmm.
I watch highlights of shows. I could never.
Yeah.
Because it's tough. There's Ring of Honor, PWG, WWE, of course. I don't even Lucha Underground. I watched a lot of the highlights too.
So you still consider yourself a fan of wrestling?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, it's literally just for the purpose of my job. That's all it is.
I see.
Yeah, it's that's not to say I don't take enjoyment and stuff.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
like when it becomes your job, it's you view it from a different angle.
Yeah, definitely, there's a different perspective to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Kenny, man, I can't thank you enough on the morning of the G1. I hope my conversation with you inspires you to have an amazing G1. When you're in there,
I'll try, man.
You have Master of Puppets and Hatebreed blasting in your head. You have those earworms
going.
Yeah. On your way to victory. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. Like I've from the moment I heard that Jericho podcast where you said you loved Blind Guardian of all bands, not like, oh yeah, I'm a big, like I love Enter Sandman by Metallica.
Slipknot fan or whatever.
Yeah. I was like Blind Guardian.
Nothing wrong with that, but yeah.
Yeah. But I just like such a specific, relatively obscure in relation to the mainstream world band. I was like, oh man, I would love to talk to you about metal, and I'm sure plenty metalheads on Metal Injection are hearing you for the first time, and definitely check out Kenny's matches. I tell everyone about your stuff. I sent the Wrestle Kingdom match to